Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just, yeah, as a child, I'm aware that I struggled with not knowing what empathy was. So as I became older, I began to understand more. So yeah, so I'm really,
Well,
anything to do with
welcome.
empathy, I'm always really
Yeah.
willing and just happy to be part. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Kathy Kidd. I've been doing the empathy circles for about 1.5 years. I'm a social worker and therapist. I live in Houston, Texas. And the first time I did it, I was immediately hooked. And so I've been coming back ever since. And so I'm just going to go around the circle for those who haven't introduced themselves yet. Oh, welcome, Karis. Have you been to an empathy circle before?
No, it's my first time. Hi.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome.
Hi.
Why don't you just introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and just real quick, 30 seconds, how did you find out about us?
Sure thing. So I'm Karis. I was born in Wales, but I'm based now in Berlin, Germany. And I started learning about empathy through nonviolent education, nonviolent communication, and started doing some empathy body meetings. And then I was part of a group on LinkedIn and saw a posting for this cafe. And I was really curious to meet more people and practice and connect with others over this topic.
You've
So
come to the right place.
Yeah.
Thank you. Larry, do you want to take 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'm Larry. I'm in Florida, and I'm a retired occupational therapist. And I found these empathy circles on YouTube, started watching them, and couldn't believe what I was seeing, because to me, it's like, I can't believe that such a simple thing as reflecting back what someone just said would have, what an amazing impact it has, demonstrating that we're actually listening to someone else. So I fell in love with empathy circles, and I just am here because I love them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Sally, take 30 seconds to introduce yourself.
Hi, I kind of, I started almost at the very beginning, was very cautious, and I, before that was working with nonviolent communication, and so maybe almost 3 years of background, and I have been through the facilitation training, I think 5 times. Oh, and I'm a retired associate transportation planner.
Great. Thank you, Sally. And Nick already told us about who he is and why he's here, but do you want to just say your name and where you're calling from, Nick?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Nick. I'm from Canada, London, Ontario. And I'm just here because I'm interested in the process. As I was mentioning to Edwin and the people who were here before, I got interested through the work of John Vervaeke, and this idea of dialogue and flow was really interesting to me, and building meaningful connections and experiences. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm here.
Thank you, Nick. Bill.
Yeah, my name is Bill Filler. I've been doing working with Edwin for about 5 years. I'm a retired special education teacher, and in my work, I just saw how reflective listening can really help a student de-escalate and build trust. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Edwin.
Yeah, Edwin Rutch. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, director of the Center for Building Culture of Empathy. So been working for about 14, 15 years on the topic of empathy. And I just find that the empathy circles are one of the best first step gateway practices to empathy building sort of mindset and way of being, and trying to promote empathy circles as widely as possible.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself and briefly tell us what brings you?
Thank you. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm interested in the empathy circle formal technique, which allows for reflection and speaking and group building. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. So we're going to tell you about the training and our website. I'm going to show you that. Then we're going to talk about how to do an empathy circle since we have some new people on the call. Then we'll do the empathy circle and then we'll come back and debrief. We'll probably stay in one circle today. And our circle lasts about an hour and a half. And we always have a topic. So we'll tell you what that is when we start the circle. And I'm going to share my screen and show you the website and tell you a little bit about what's there. Here we go. All right, everybody see this? This is the website bestempathytraining.com. If you click on it, it'll be in your browser when you disconnect from the call today, and you can take a closer look at it. This is a training that's 5 weeks, consecutive Saturdays or consecutive Mondays, 2.5 hours each. And you learn how to facilitate the empathy circle and become a part of the community. You keep coming back and you see some of the same people and you get to know each other. It's definitely a community that's been building over the years. And if you want to know more about the website and the training, you can take this little, click on this little video here. Our vision is a global culture of empathy based on the foundational values of mutual empathy, openness, and care. We believe a global culture based on empathy would contribute to the well-being of humanity and the planet. Our goal and mission is to raise the level of empathy on the planet by training all 8 billion people to be able to take part in and facilitate empathy circles. We are an open source empathy training. We invite anyone to use our training curriculum and resources to hold your own trainings. You can use, study, change, distribute, and build on this training. Just give credit and link back to this training website. You can also be part of co-hosting, co-designing, co-developing, and promoting the training. We have some different committees going on, one empathy in the schools and some others that Edwin will tell us about at the end of the call. And if you want to take the training, there is a $30 registration fee. And beyond that, the training is $0 to $300. So it's on a sliding scale fee basis. We all donate our time to train people that want to be trained. And even if you don't take the training, if you can support this work by donating here. So in order to start the training, we ask that you complete 2 empathy circles. So this is one empathy circle. And the next training starts in 2 Saturdays on December 24th. So it'll be 5 Saturdays in a row.
It's actually
It'll be a
January.
6
It's,
January.
January, yeah.
Good. I tell you, I get all my months mixed up.
It's down there at the bottom. You'll see the
Okay,
date.
good. Yeah. January is when the next training starts. It'll be 5 consecutive Saturdays. And there's one extra Saturday that you're going to do also as part of that training, right?
Yeah, we just added a 6th session on using empathy circles for conflict mediation.
So that's an extra Saturday that they don't have to attend. It's not part of the training. And so the time commitment, 5 Saturdays, 2.5 hours each week. And between sessions, we do have empathy buddy calls. And we ask that you work on practicing an empathy circle between the trainings. You do receive a certificate of completion. And again, you become part of a very supportive community. And so you can sign up for the training here. The next one begins Saturday, January 21st, and we haven't set the Monday date yet. So let me stop sharing. Anyone have any questions? Okay, so I'm going to do the how-to empathy circle for those who have not done this before. Let's see, let me find it. Here it is. Okay, so we usually have 3 to 5 participants in a circle. When it's 9 or less, sometimes we'll stay in a big circle. And so the first person is going to be a listener, and it'll be one of the facilitators that's done the circle before. And they'll ask somebody to volunteer to speak. And since we're going to stay in a smaller circle, we'll do 4 minutes each. Or stay in a large circle, we'll do 4 minutes each. And you can speak about whatever's alive in you or whatever the topic is. And then I'll be I think Bill will be the first person to listen. So he's going to reflect back what he hears the speaker saying. And then once that 4 minutes finished, then Bill, who is the listener, will get to select somebody to listen to him and reflect him. So there's 4 roles: the active listener, the active speaker, the active listener, the facilitator, and everyone else is silent listeners, but it's still an active role because you're holding the space of empathy. So the speaker wants to pause often so that you don't say too much and the listener's unable to reflect back. And when you're done speaking, your 4 minutes, or if it's sooner than that, you can stop sooner. Let us know if you've been fully heard. If not, we want to finish the reflection so that you are heard. At the 4 minute marker, if you're still speaking, go ahead and wrap up your thought and you'll still get your reflection. And I think that's it. It's very simple. And once you get started, those of you who are new will see what we're doing. And if we feel like we need to provide guidance, we will. And the last thing I'll say is often we're tempted to agree with somebody or want to provide like verbal empathy for that person or ask a question. And so that's the challenge in this, is that all we're doing is reflecting back whatever the speaker is saying. Even if the speaker asks me a question, like I'd like to know more about what that was like for you, you're still going to reflect back, so you're really curious about what that was like for me. You're not going to answer the question. So with that, Bill, I will turn it over to you. And Larry, you're going to do the timing on the screen. Is that correct?
Yes, three minute time. Did you say 3 minutes?
I think we're going to do 4 minutes. Is that correct, or 3? Bill?
Edwin?
Larry? Yeah, we could start off with 4, and if it seems to go on too long, then we could try 3.
Okay, because we have 10 people.
Should we do 2 rooms? Usually we could do 2 rooms.
I think we should do 2
yeah,
rooms.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me.
Oh, Larry, what are you saying?
1 room, 3 minutes.
Okay.
We'll start with that. And then we can always break into 2. Then
Okay.
let's try that.
Yeah,
first.
Sharon asked to just observe too, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me welcome Eric. Hi, Eric. Have you been to the circles before?
Cycle. I'm in the circle land, so this is just one of many circles.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm raising my hand. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Are you familiar with our format?
Based on what you had showed in the PDF earlier, yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, welcome, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to Bill to get started.
Okay. All right. So who would like to speak first?
Oh, and our topic was
Topic is
describe your experience. Yeah, go ahead.
describe your experience of the empathy circle, or whatever is alive for you. It's very important to note that you can go off topic. That's allowed in an empathy circle. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, hello, everyone. I have a next door neighbor who shares a fence, and the fence started falling down last year.
So you, reflecting on, you have a neighbor with whom you share a fence, and it has started to fall down last year.
And I had to make a ad hoc or here now decision, either to intervene and stop it from falling down, or to let the thing fall down.
So the choice was to either try to jury rig something to keep it up or let it fall down.
And the mistake I made was not understanding the good neighbor law.
Okay, so you made a mistake by not understanding the good neighbor law.
And the fence has problematic title, even though it's a one fence dividing two properties.
Yeah, and there seems to be a title dispute over the fence, or it's unclear.
So I benefited from studying the empathy circle technique because I had a 1-hour discussion with one of the principals. And by learning how to listen better, it allowed me to understand their position.
So applying the principles that you've learned and practiced here, it helped you in having a dialogue with your neighbors to understand their perspective.
So now I'm at the point where I understand both sides, and it reveals to me that when you have a binary, you have two positions, often you have to bring a third, perhaps a judge, perhaps a legal system, in to resolve it. And prior, I was biased to one side or the other. Now, having listened to both sides, or I feel I understand both sides, well, I feel better about the situation, but I'm challenged with what do I do?
So usually your experience has been when there are two opposing views, then you need a third person or a third authority to adjudicate. This particular time you were able to understand, so you're not quite as biased or dug in your own position, but you still are left with what do you do about this?
Yeah, and in general, I feel better because I feel like some of the skills I've picked up by attending these sessions and listening to people has increased my creativity in being able to understand people and kind of unconsciously want to understand them because I'm kind of learned some things participating here.
Yeah. So your experience in the empathy circles helped you to, help create this dialogue, gain an understanding, and you find that you're just not so goal oriented in as far as, black and white, let's get this fixed, as opposed to, really kind of understanding the social dynamics of what's going on. Yet still there's a fence to deal with.
Yeah. In general, I just feel better about it. I feel I understand it better.
Okay. So yeah. So the problem remains, but you feel better about it because you're able to have broadened your understanding, your listening skills.
Well, thank you for listening.
Okay. All right. Okay, Larry, will you listen to me?
Ready. Thank you.
Yeah. So Jonathan has been reflecting on something in our conversations that I've really noticed. And one of the things that we say is that empathy is sort of like physical exercise. It's a muscle that needs to be practiced. I'll stop there.
So Bill, I'm hearing you say that Jonathan is reflecting on something you've been discussing. And you're saying that it's like empathy is like a muscle that requires exercise. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And so like people think, okay, well, I read the book on empathy and so now I'm done, now I know about it, but actually it's not like you do like 50 sit-ups and then you say, okay, that's it for the rest of my life, I know what this is about, I don't need to do sit-ups anymore.
So Bill, I'm hearing you say that for you, empathy is like, it's not like exercise where it's different from exercise. It's not like you read the book and then you're done. To do the 50 sit-ups, you got to do the 50 sit-ups, something like that.
Yeah, except that I'm making an analogy to it. It is like exercise. It's something that if you want to keep the muscle tone, if you want to keep your empathy tone, you got to practice.
Yeah, so it's not like reading a book where you just read the book and then put it down. It's more like exercise. If you want the benefits of doing the 50 sit-ups or push-ups or whatever, you got to do the exercise, something like that.
Right. And then the regular practice of the exercise really starts to work on changing your worldview.
And I hear you saying that your worldview changes as you practice empathy.
Right. And what you start with, at least I found, was that a lot of my cultural conditioning becomes very obvious to me, and I can discard a lot of my cultural conditioning that is either bad or I just no longer need it.
So Bill, I hear you saying as you're speaking for yourself, that you can notice the cultural conditioning that's been accumulated over a lifetime and start to notice, what of this cultural condition is really enhancing my experience of life. You didn't say those words, but something like that. What's benefiting me really? And what would I rather just, discard? Something like that.
Right. And again, just to sum up, is that other people, which again in my conditioning is, we're all very distinct individuals, that has begun to blur, and I understand that yes, I exist as an individual, and that's fine, but I also exist as part of a community, and that's just as important. And then I'm done. Thanks.
And notice you're saying that in your personal experience, the idea of people being individual, separate identities is beginning to blur, kind of fading, as you didn't say these words, kind of melt into oneness, but it sounds like you're saying that in the practice of empathy, there's less bordering or borderlining or territory marking. There's less of that individual stuff and more of a oneness. I don't know if you said that word, but something like that.
I'll make one distinction. It's not the death of the individual. It's not like it's like that's vivid, but as I accept my individuality, I also accept my role as part of a community. So both become more vivid. So my conditioning says, oh, if you go into this morass of empathy, you'll lose yourself. And that's not been in my experience. I experience myself in greater context, and I also am more open to other people. And then I'm done,
So in this final reflection, as you go more and more into the living empathy, it's more of a oneness with community and less of an individual point of view or something like that.
Actually, it augments both at the same time. I know that seems weird, but
both at the same time. It's both at the same time. And you're saying, I know it sounds weird, but it's really happening. Something like that.
Thank you, Larry. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Eric, would you be my listener?
Okay.
All right. Oh, well, I want to say honestly, Eric, it is a joy to see you here.
So you're acknowledging that it's a joy to see me, Eric, here at the group today.
Yes. full disclosure, I have participated in your wisdom groups and I love them.
So you're taking this opportunity for disclosure that you participated in my wisdom groups and you had a good time, you enjoyed it.
Mhm. And it's so ironic and interesting that what Bill is just describing is exactly what I experience in your wisdom groups.
And to continue with the idea of the wisdom groups, you're noticing an irony in how you, by listening to Bill, it resonated with a lot of what the group topics were.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, in empathy, there's kind of a melting away of the hierarchical structure that's kind of built into culture.
And you're expressing your experience, which is with empathy, in that there's a melting away of hierarchical structure, ego, hierarchical structure. And you're noticing something positive about that.
Hmm. It's been a long time coming.
Oh, God. It's been a long time coming, is what you're noticing about the emphasis of the topic.
Mhm. I think Crosby, Stills and Nash sang that song.
And now you're having an association about this. What you're talking about is very similar to the theme of Crosby, Stills and Nash. Kind of ties in the connectivity.
Mm. Yes, it's just, it would be so wonderful if humanity would, myself obviously included, live with empathy for one another.
And in this moment that we're interacting, you have the thought that, and you're visualizing possibly, I don't know, but it looks like you're really sensing what the world would be like with empathy.
Thank you, Eric. I feel fully heard.
Thank you as well for giving me the opportunity to listen.
So you become the new speaker. You can pick any listener.
Okay, here we go. I come new speakerisms here. Can I go with Kathy to be a listener?
Yes, I'm listening.
So today I was speaking with my sister and I had an insight over the phone.
So you were speaking with your sister and had an insight.
At least I think it was an insight, because I'm seeing how our biology reflects that the patterns of life and the programming of life isn't really fulfilling. It's not sustainable. And that was the topic.
Mm. So you think you had an insight, and it's regarding the patterns and programming of life, and you're thinking they're not sustainable.
Yeah, and there was I was listening to a TED Talk and it focused on how brain activity of a child is very different than an adult. It's a lot less as an adult. And then they discovered how that activity of a child can be recreated through, I think it's called ethanogenic plants. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it was first understood that the brain activity of an adult was less than that of a child, but now there's something that says that we can increase our brain activity as an adult to have it similar to when we were a child.
Yeah, I thought that was really fascinating. That's exactly what I'm saying. So that's kind of what's jazzing me up right now, is the possibility that our curiosity can be restored, our bizarre activity and making mistakes and just not clinging to depression or sadness like a child is possible as an adult. So I just thought I'd say that.
Yes, you're really excited about this, that maybe we don't have to hang on to those patterns or beliefs or thoughts, and can be curious and make changes.
No, yes, that's pretty much it. I feel heard. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Welcome. All right, so God, I have so many wonderful choices here. Nick, would you be willing to listen to me?
Definitely listening.
So here's what I'm thinking about. I always have to make notes. We listen from the point of view of who we are.
So you're reflecting on that you were wondering what to think about and that you were making some notes. And the phrase that came to you was, we reflect and listen from who we are.
Mhm. And the ease of that is it's easy to listen to philosophies we agree with.
So you're noticing that it's easier to listen to philosophies that we agree with.
Mhm. And two challenges in that. If we are among people that we believe are like-minded, we can fill in gaps that maybe aren't there.
So you're noticing two main challenges with this. One being, if you agree, you can fill in gaps and maybe have some biases that you add to what you're hearing.
Right. And then what if it's somebody we vehemently disagree with? Polar opposite philosophies, polarized points of view, that's another challenge.
So in opposition to the ways in which, or the challenges that can be met with someone that you agree with, there's an opposing challenge of someone who you disagree with, or have a polar opposite view of.
Yeah, I remember talking to somebody maybe 20 years ago, and they said wars will always be with us. And I was able to say, well, that's an interesting point of view.
So a memory came to your mind of someone who mentioned the phrase, wars will always be with us. And maybe it was something that you didn't agree with, but you were able to kind of listen and still
Yeah.
maybe connect.
Yeah, but that was very dismissive, right? I did not engage one bit, just dismissed it.
So you noticed in that interaction that you kind of jumped to dismissive
Mhm.
and disengaged in
Yeah.
hearing that.
Yeah, it was a polite dismissiveness. And then I'm saying, is there such thing as dismissiveness being polite?
So initially you feel that it was a polite dismissiveness, and then there was some curiosity around, can dismissiveness be polite?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'll stop there. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll choose Edwin.
Yep, listening.
I guess I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of topics that I have to choose from here, because there's a lot of resonant topics.
Yeah, just seeing a lot of resonant topics and feeling a bit overwhelmed about maybe which one to talk about.
Yeah, and there's so many lines, kind of so many roads or paths to follow. I'm kind of wondering which one is most relevant to me to take.
You're just sitting, seeing the different roads and paths to follow and just trying to decide which one's the most relevant to you now.
Yeah, so I guess in hearing that reflected back, one of the things that stuck out to me was what Eric was saying about being like a child again.
And the one that has sort of the most energy is the one that Eric mentioned about being a child again, that topic.
Yeah, and just reflecting on maybe what it was like to be a child, and maybe what that way of being was like in comparison to being an adult or someone who's older.
So you're sort of checking, what was it like when you were a child, that sort of that way of being of a child, and maybe comparing it to the present and kind of looking at how they compare.
Yeah, and just kind of reflecting on the freedom of a child being able to kind of explore how they want, but also there's limitations put on us by adults. So in a way we're more free, but in a way we're also less free at the same time.
Yeah, so you're just thinking, remembering as a child, you're free to do a lot of different things, but there is a constraint that adults were putting on. So in some way you're more free, but then less free too. So a little bit of a dichotomy there.
Yeah, it seems a bit paradoxical of, just reflecting on like a kid. I can't wait to be an adult so I can do whatever I want or drive here or buy, as much candy as I want.
Yeah, so it's like as a kid, you're wanting to be an adult, so you have all this freedom, get all the candy you want, do it, drive, whatever. And so you're kind of looking to be an adult for that freedom.
Yeah, and then in the opposing view, the adult is kind of wishing that they had the freedom of a child again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the child wants to be an adult to be free, and the adult wants to be a child to be free.
Yeah, so they're both kind of searching for freedom in being each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, so they're both searching for freedom in being different and being each other.
Yeah, no, I feel heard. Thank you for listening, Edwin.
Oh, okay. Now speak to Carice.
Sure thing.
Yeah, so the thing that kind of I had the energy around was Jonathan talking about his sort of a somewhat mediation with the neighbors there. So that's the topic that I kind of feel energized about.
Okay, so you are aiming to share with us something that resonated with you when you heard Jonathan speak about his neighbor and this particular experience. And you'd like to focus on that.
Yeah, he was saying, oh, he had more understanding of the situation and was able to listen better. But it seemed to be this, well, what do you do now? Like, how do you solve the problem seemed to be the issue. And I've got thoughts about that.
Okay. So there was the part that you understood that he had gained sort of understanding in terms of being able to listen, but then there was also this second part around the agency of, okay, what is the next step once you have understood through listening? And this is something that you've also had similar thoughts about.
Yeah, so we do mediation, and we use this empathy circle for the conflict mediation. So you can bring all the neighbors together to, talk about the issue and for everyone to be able to listen to each other. So that's one sort of application of the empathy circle, is to have that container for everyone being heard to explore whatever the problem is.
So you're sharing an example of when you use the empathy circle as a tool within a mediation setting, and you tied in with the idea of how you could bring together the neighbors and potentially use empathy circles within a mediation to try to find some mutual agreement amongst the neighbors.
Yeah, and then what happens once people understand the problem, because there's sort of this problem exploration phase, where everybody's sharing what their feelings are about the problem, be it, I can't remember what it was, the fence falling down. Then you as a mediator, you sort of put the question, once you have that connection, you put the question in there, what do we do now about this? And then you use the empathy circle to negotiate sort of the next step. So the empathy circle is good for that next step negotiation as well.
Okay, so I heard that you were giving some detail to explain the phases of mediation, where there is this phase of sharing perspective, perhaps problems are being highlighted or grievances, and that as a next phase as a mediator, you can apply the tool of the empathy circle to look for some sort of negotiation or exchange after people have understood each other's perspectives.
Yeah, and for me, I enjoy the process. I think it's a fun, creative process. So I have a lot of enjoyment in it.
Okay, I hear that for you it's a enjoyable process.
Yep, feel fully heard. Thank you.
I think Jonathan would listen to me, I believe.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Jonathan and everybody, I am curiously struggling to think of what to share, because I I'm not used to doing in such a group setting. So to have so many ears and eyes listening is a little bit overwhelming for me. I usually do it one-on-one with a known empathy buddy.
I'm hearing you say that uh, your previous experiences have been more one-on-one, and so you're just a little overwhelmed right now, having us all listening.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm wondering about how I arrived here, like the significance of this word empathy, why it was so meaningful for me to see this opportunity to join you, and that it is sort of part of a journey that I feel I'm going through with relation to how I live in a more empathic way.
You're wondering how you got here. I feel that you followed a trail, and the leading indicator was the word empathy, and now you're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I remember an animation that very visually described to me this idea of empathy versus sympathy. And I think that I was seeking, some sort of tool and bridge to feel connected to others. And the idea of connecting through this understanding that empathy offers was very meaningful.
What came to mind was a cartoon or an image that gave you an insight into empathy, and with this insight, you felt that there were bridges or tools to empathy, and so you're exploring.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think one thing that I particularly enjoy is being comfortable with the silence of listening, and not needing to rush to give opinion or advice or share my own experience, but rather to sit and listen to the other and connect through that. And I appreciate that about this practice.
And what you're sharing with us is your own discovery, or the wisdom that you have, that listening gives you a bridge to empathize with others, and that you're appreciative of this meeting where you feel there's a lot of people supportively listening.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So Jonathan, you become the new speaker.
Well, thank you, Larry. Sharon, would you reflect for me?
She asked to observe because she's babysitting.
Oh, well, how about Eric? Would you like to reflect?
Give it a go, Jonathan.
Um, so, well, this morning I spent my time looking at rocks, and I'm planning on buying a half a ton of rocks. And they're these black pebbles. They're called Mexican black stones. And so I'm going to pick out the 1-inch diameter ones. And I ran into the mathematics of the problem.
So what seems to be on your mind is rocks, because you were looking at rocks, particularly these rocks noted by a region of the world, Mexican. Sorry, I don't know what the term is, but some of these 1 inch, and you're thinking you got to buy about a ton of them, and but you're also coming into some more factors to consider.
Yeah, I was up calculating my the square feet and got lost in translating inches to feet to from square feet to cubic feet, and it so I've just been worrying about these calculations.
So you're worried about calculations, and you're seeing that these conversions can get very wormy with the results, depending on what formula you use to calculate them.
Yeah, and I don't know why that came to my mind. Perhaps I'm just looking at the notes on my desk. I'm going to speak on a little bit of a new topic. It's called scotoma.
So you're noticing that the topic you chose had to do with looking at notes on your desk, but you would like to change the topic to, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's called stachoma?
Scotoma.
Scotoma.
Yeah, it's called a blind spot. And what I feel is that with my relationships with the neighbor, having a 1 hour dialogue with him where I actually did some reflection, I'm filling in the blind spots or the scotomas. Scotoma is actually a medical term, and it's a blind spot in your vision. And people will say, there's no blind spot in my vision. And then you can actually move things around physically, and they actually have a blind spot. And what the empathy circle practice does is gives us time through exchanges. In other words, I'm talking to people and they're reflecting, and if they don't reflect, I can learn perhaps that they have a blind spot, and that opens the door to improving the situation through education.
So I know we're at time, but I think what I'm hearing is that this word, this medical terminology, scotoma, is very relevant symbolically, maybe even more so, because that even with that hour conversation, you noticed a blind spot. And the reason why you noticed it is because as you move that conversation around in your mind, there's pieces that are missing. So you're trying to fill in those pieces, is what I think I mean.
Yeah, well, thank you. I feel fully heard.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, what do I do? Pick somebody again?
Yep.
Wow, I got 2 people. Oh my God, round 2. Edwin, available?
Listening.
Ring, ring. Thank you. So on my mind is a continuation of what I was saying earlier, which was, it's really nice that there are all kinds of possibilities, not just through plants, but through care and love of one another, that we can find some sort of homeostasis. It's just a matter of looking for it and embracing it and valuing it, similar to what empathy circles are doing. They're valuing and embracing something they know is going to bring great value to humanity.
So you're sort of appreciating that there's things that we can do that will create more value, more homeostasis, more maybe well-being for humanity, and just glad that those are out there.
Absolutely, it's exactly it. And I'm just going to be really bold to say that there really doesn't have to be any suffering on this planet. And maybe the only suffering that ever will be on the planet is within the context of our own psyche.
Yeah, so you're just saying that there doesn't have to be suffering out there. It's just the suffering that we have in our psyche. It's that we sort of that we create.
And yeah, that is what I'm saying. And I think it is, if we want to create suffering, that we should be okay with it. Maybe just have fun with it. But I don't know. I guess I'm just really grateful that as I mature in my body on this planet, that I really feel like there's so much more to be curious about, because that's the kind of world I want to live in.
Mhm. So you're just grateful that there's so much that you can be curious about, and that because that's the kind of world you want to live in. That there's all these possibilities there.
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Edwin, for listening to me today for round two.
Okay, I'm hearing some gratitude that you're being heard for the second time, and I will speak to Nick.
Listening.
Yeah, let's see what's on my mind in terms of the topic of the empathy circle. Yeah, I just enjoy the empathy circle to hear all these different perspectives from people, and sort of the tone of the circle, how everything sort of slows down, and it creates a less stress-free environment for me.
So at first you were scanning for what was relevant to you, and you were reflecting on how much you liked the process and hearing different perspectives and noticing different tones between people and topics.
Yeah, and then my mind is starting to go around, and I know that you're with John Vervaeke, has followed his work, and it kind of made me think of the empathy circle I did with him on the topic of what does reason feel like. So we were exploring, usually you think of reason as sort of this mechanical or non-feeling sort of state of mind. But we did an empathy circle on what does it feel like when you reason, that there's a felt experience to reason. That was like a fun, it was a fun exploration.
So you're noticing in my mention of John Vervaeke's work, there was a reflection on your part of the conversation that you had about what reason feels like, and this comparison of reason to being this mechanical process to actually bringing emotion and feeling into it, and how those are connected and not different.
Yeah. And how that reason does have a felt experience to it. That you can actually feel your reason. It's almost like we cannot not feel, right? It's when we're thinking, when we're reasoning, that it does have a felt experience to it.
So you're reflecting on how reason does have a feeling, and you can't seem to disconnect them. And so when you are reasoning, you're also feeling, and there is a feeling of reason, and they're interlinked.
Yeah. And that's sort of an aside of what I was saying about the empathy circle. Like a lot of times in groups, I feel a lot of tension and stress because you got to compete to feel heard, and it's like, oh, if I don't, say something, like the less I say, the less I'll start saying, and the more anxious I'll get that I'm not sort of part of the conversation. So it creates a lot of sort of anxiety and stress about who's going to be heard and so forth. Whereas with the empathy circle, I know eventually the turn will come to me, and I'm going to be heard to my satisfaction. So I can relax a little bit.
So you're maybe noticing the tensions and the competition aspects of general group dynamics, and shifting away from the what reason feels like to be relevant to the empathy circle. You notice that there's these feelings of tension and competition, but you actually feel like, oh, I can relax because I don't have to compete or withdraw. I will get my turn to speak and listen.
Yeah, I feel very heard. Thanks.
I'll speak to Bill.
Listening?
Yeah, I get very excited about Edwin wanting to talk about Vervaeke's work, because it's been something that's very, very meaningful and relevant to my life right now.
So you were stimulated by Edwin's mention of Vervaeke and his work because it's very meaningful to you.
Yeah, and I have actually watched the What Does Reason Feel Like video, I think a couple times actually. So I really resonate with what they were saying and what Edwin is saying about how reason and feeling are connected.
So you had viewed the session that we did with on what does reason feel like, and you kind of agree with the premise that reason and feelings are connected.
Yeah, and I have this desire to continue the conversation in the way that it connects with my life, where the rubber meets the road kind of thing.
Yeah, so you're looking to explore further in and apply it to your own life, looking where your real life experience, how does it affect your real life experience, the feeling of reason?
Yeah, because for me, to reason about something or to try and figure something out or use logic, first you have to care about it enough to want to reason through it.
Right. So reasoning requires a certain amount of brain power and dedication. And so therefore that brings in the issue of care. You have to care about the issue in order to want to solve it.
Yeah, and in hearing that, to care about something, it has to kind of resonate with you, or it has to jump out at you, or it has to be relevant in some sort of way that is meaningful to you to try and even problem solve.
Hmm. So, yeah. So in other words, in order to tackle a problem or try to reason it out, it has to have that emotional component of care, because otherwise, why do it?
Yeah, and then bringing this into the empathy circle, I think, kind of like Jonathan was saying about this mediation, to actually want to engage in the process of circling or empathy circle, you have to care enough about another to engage in the process and stick with it. Yeah.
So you're making an analogy to the empathy circle process and how a prerequisite for doing listening is a certain amount of care for the other.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you for listening, Bill.
Sure, my pleasure. Okay, Kathy, get you in.
I knew you were going to choose me. I'm listening.
Okay. Um, so, yeah. So my experience with empathy circles, well, not empathy, but reflective listening, because when I was working, I didn't know about empathy circles, was watching students and who are very extreme on, as far as behavior problems, how their behavior actually changed when they were listened to.
Mhm. So your experience with reflective listening, when you worked with kids, was that when you did that, their behavior changed when they felt like they were heard.
Right. And I've told this story many times, but one of the great learnings that I had was when a student might act out impulsively by throwing a punch, a book, or a desk. We would, we'd have to maintain safety, of course, but then afterwards we'd group up and we would ask ourselves the question, what was the communicative intent of that act?
Mhm. So even if a student was acting impulsively by throwing something, whether it's fist or an object, you still wanted to know what need was he or she trying to get met.
Right. And initially I said, well, what does this have to do with it? Because it was removed and it seemed like such an impulsive and random act. But when we did our homework, we found out that the student who hadn't been fed or had seen a violent action or done something like that. And so that when we could address that issue, then it felt that the student didn't need to be violent to communicate their state of being. And so therefore a dialogue could ensue.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you learned that this method worked of listening to them and identifying their needs, and that they learned that they could communicate that rather than with words, rather than having to throw something.
Right. And as I watch the news today with all these acts of violence, I ask myself the same question. What's the communicative intent? and you can really see that everybody wants to be heard, that this is a much greater and more profound human need than is really acknowledged. And then I'm done. Thanks.
Mhm. And so you apply that, what you learned in the classroom to the broader world, and you see that everyone has that need to be heard.
Thank you, Kathy. I feel fully heard.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so my turn to talk. Karis, would you be willing to listen to me?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So I love the topic of learning because I want to share something I learned in these empathy circles.
Okay, Kathy, so you're very keen to share with us something that you have learned in the empathy circles, and learning is really important to you.
Yes, yes. So one time I was discussing a topic. No, somebody was discussing a topic in the empathy circle that I wholeheartedly disagreed with.
So you are reflecting on an occasion where somebody within the empathy circle shared an opinion or an idea which for you was not aligned with your own.
Right. And so when it was my turn to talk, I said I disagreed with it, and this is my point of view. And now I'm thinking I don't have to tell somebody I disagree with them. I can just share my point of view.
Okay. So you're reflecting on how you responded to this opinion from the other person, that you stated yourself that you disagree with this opinion. And now in hindsight, you realize you don't need to share firstly that you disagree.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's my opinion. And what does it matter if I agree or disagree? It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you've reached a point now where you feel clear on what your opinion is, and that this is enough, that it is your opinion and that is valid, and that you don't need to state any form of disagreement, that your opinion is completely enough as it is.
Yes, I now believe that my disagreement invalidates their opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it wasn't your intention to invalidate their opinion by saying that you disagree.
Well, I would take it a step further. I now believe that my belief, right, that anytime we disagree, we are invalidating somebody else's opinion.
Okay, so yeah, at this point, you feel that if we are to state that we disagree with somebody, that automatically invalidates what they are saying.
Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
That's very welcome. Larry, would you listen? Are you still? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So, well, it's the end of the day already here in Germany, and I feel that I had two things that called on me today to do. This empathy cafe is one of them.
So Carrie, I'm hearing you say that you are living in Germany, where the time zone is such that this is the end of the day. And there were two things that you felt called on to do today, and the empathy circle is one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm drawing correlations and links between the other, which was a group meditation practice.
And you're drawing correlations and links with the other activity, which was a group meditation activity.
Yeah, exactly. Because I realized in the idea of, or in the experience of the meditation, there was one part of it which really was of huge value to me, which was connecting with others.
And in the group meditation, one thing you were looking at was the the value of connecting with others.
Mhm. And of remaining present in the here and in the now, and of letting go of like pacing thoughts or judgments or this automatic way of thinking that can take over our headspace.
And looking at the value of connection, remaining in the here and now, in a space, and letting go of judgments that can occupy our mind with thoughts, something like that.
Exactly. And so that's why I am now sitting here and feeling a similar experience to what we're doing with this empathy circle of really being present, really showing up to listen to each other, and rather than taking the bus of the train of thoughts of our own ideas, thinking instead and being with the other person while they speak.
And I think I hear you saying that in the joining in the empathy circle space, there's the same as the meditation space. And there was one part I can't quite reflect, but I'm hearing a oneness of the space of connection and empathy and in meditation. And there was something about somebody's thought taking birth, something like that.
It was this more like a vehicle that your thoughts can jump on a bus and it goes off without you really driving it. And it's the same here, that we try to remain present.
So there's noticing that thoughts can be like when you're jumping on a bus and they just go off somewhere by jumping on the bus of the thought, something like that.
Mhm.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Larry.
Nick, will you be my listener, please?
Listening.
I so resonate with what Carrie just shared.
So you're feeling a lot of resonation, with which was just shared to you.
The empathy circle is like a way of meditation.
So you're noticing a correlation between the empathy circle being much like a form of meditation.
And it's a way of being.
And participating in the empathy circle brings about like a way of being.
It's like a way of being in meditation and still being able to talk and listen.
So you're noticing in this way of being like a meditation while also still maintaining the ability to listen and reflect.
Yes, so the empathy, the meditation is like awakening gently and being able to say, hello.
So you're noticing this empathy and mindfulness coming together in a way that made you want to sing your words as you were speaking them.
And to hear the song.
So, and to hear the song. So there's this metaphor of music coming to you.
So empathy, meditation, singing, communication. Now, what's alive in each of us to express joyfully.
So you're noticing this connection between empathy and mindfulness and meditation and singing and all of these factors to come in this form of presence to come together in this moment right now.
And life becomes a celebration right now to enjoy.
And there's a celebratory element to this of us coming together and a joy and a sharing in this joy and celebration together through this process.
Thank you, Nick. I feel fully heard.
Thanks for sharing, Larry. Yeah, I guess I almost feel a desire to be silent for a second and just take that in. Oh, I guess I should pick somebody though. Maybe Eric?
Thank you, Nick. What's on your mind? I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, I guess I'm feeling this, I don't want to say conflict, but these opposing desires to be quiet and kind of meditate, but also continue with other relevant ideas that were popping up in the conversation.
I'm not sure if I'm hearing you right, but I give it my best shot. Sounds like you're noticing that your state of mind is becoming more meditative, and while the exercise of the empathy circle is to listen and speak about what we've heard, or feedback what we've heard, or listen, or be the speaker, but yet you're having this moment where you just want to be with the silence.
Yeah. So I'm noticing, yeah, the enjoyment of the silence right now.
And so what's attracting you to silence is it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable that your mind is there.
Yeah, and normally in a group conversation, I feel like maybe there's not a lot of silence and space between to really just allow things to kind of to be together rather than having to always share.
And so the silence is resonating with you, and even to the point where you're seeing how these other groups don't give it an opportunity, don't see the value, and you're seeing the value or its importance or its power.
Yeah, and I also wanted to reflect as time runs out on my my round here that there was a curiosity in me about your comment of the suffering and the necessity of suffering in life.
And so you're reflecting a little bit about what you heard in the group today, particularly what I said about suffering. And it sounds like you're curious about what meaning might be behind the idea of suffering in the world and its unnecessariness.
Yeah, and almost this curiosity of there doesn't have to be suffering, but maybe there's a purpose to suffering. Maybe there's a reason that suffering gives our lives that might be worth exploring a little bit.
And so what's coming up for you is that sure, there maybe we could live in a world without suffering, but maybe it's here because it serves a purpose. Maybe there's something that we're not seeing, the gift in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thanks, Eric.
I'm gonna, is it possible to pass, because my mind is a blank?
The way you can pass is to select someone, just say, hey, my mind is blank. They'll reflect back and then you say, I feel fully heard. So,
Okay. Can I do that with you, Edwin?
okay, so I'm hearing you'd like to really pass because your mind is blank.
Yeah, I think it's because I'm going to, what is that called? When you get two people to join together in solidarity. So I'm going to join Nick in solidarity with my silence and pass to you, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Yeah, so you're going to sort of connect with Link in solidarity in terms of just the silence, and so you're going to pass it on. Then I'll speak to Bill.
Listening.
Yeah, I was it's just sensing into my own feelings, like, how do I feel at the moment? So I do feel that sense of that sense of everything starts getting calm and just sort of wanting to sort of relax into it and just sort of be quiet. I have that feeling too.
Yeah, so you're resonating with both Nick and Eric talked about as far as wanting to be quiet.
And that's like one feeling, and sort of enjoying that. Like I enjoy the quiet, the spaciousness. It feels like a warm bath, kind of a warm, dark bath in the dark. It's like the lights are out and I'm sitting in a warm bath, kind of in the dark.
Right. So the feeling of that silence is like being in a warm bath in the dark.
But then there's also a feeling like, well, I want something to happen. I want something kind of more profound to happen. So I also have that sort of a drive. So I feel kind of like, two things in my body of that feeling, but a feeling like, yeah, let's have some sort of excitement or energy or some kind of a inspiration or insight.
So you have two contrasting feelings at the same time. One is for the silence, as you mentioned, and the other one is to stir things up or just to excite things or just to, have something profound happen.
Yeah, it's sort of a yearning for that, like an underlying, it's almost a little bit painful. It's almost like a painful yearning for that depth of something. I think it's a yearning for a release from sort of constriction, there's a feeling of constriction in my body. And I want that constriction to kind of open up and kind of be filled with, like some kind of inspiration or something.
So there's a yearning that you have in order to kind of break out what you feel is a constriction in a way. And so that's, so you're exploring that.
Yeah, and it's like kind of in the chest here, kind of this yearning for that, as compared to that warm bath feeling like, oh, this is great. There's no pain. It feels like it's sort of a no pain zone. It's just like really nice to, not be in pain, but there is at a deeper level, there is sort of this discomfort.
Okay, so the silence feels like the warm bath. It feels good, but beyond that, there's a need to break out of that or yearning for something else.
Yeah, and I had been thinking of holding some empathy cafes on a series on the topic of what are feelings of concern, anxiety, stress, or fear. And so it's like really facing those kind of feelings. So I see my time's up, but it's sort of a direction of taking that topic of, let's say, pain or concern and sort of doing a deep dive into that.
So you were thinking of doing a series of empathy circles focused around the topic of fear, anxiety, and things like that, and taking a deep dive into that and exploring that through the empathy circle process.
I feel fully heard.
Okay. All right. Jonathan?
Online.
Okay. So one thing that I was thinking about, a bit going astray, was what Karis said when she said that she was based in Germany.
So you're reflecting upon what Kara said, that she was in Germany.
Right. Based was the
Based.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've learned through the empathy circle is how many Europeans are in different European countries. People from Portugal and Ireland and in England and moving around. And I like that. Yeah.
And what you're sharing with us is over the years of Zoom meetings and online meetings, you've noted that that many people from many different countries are living in many different other countries,
Right.
and you find that refreshing, or you find some sense of invigoration from it.
Yeah. And not to, and because I can't leave anything alone enough, I was just thinking about, well, you're based. And I was just thinking, like, do you get a letter saying, oh, you have to move to Germany now? Like from the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, or something like that, that says you have to move.
And you're just sitting here going, why would a person have to move? Do you and absurdly, you're bringing up an absurd thing that you get a letter from some government department that says now you have to move?
Right. I was just thinking about all the impetus that goes into making a decision about which country you're going to live in.
And so you're reflecting, putting yourself in that place, and you're saying, gosh, to move out of a country, just to move to a whole new country,
Mhm.
what a lot of work and what a lot of thought must go into it, and that there's more to the story.
Yeah. Yeah, this issue of displacement is prevalent for both very serious reasons and then also very spurious reasons.
And so you're attributing your curiosity to spurious, whimsical curiosity, but also you have a serious question because there's a lot of people being displaced in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the Ukrainian situation, there are a lot of Ukrainians being displaced, and that's very serious. Um, and then there are, in my country, in the far right wing, there are people who are in no danger of anything, who are saying they're being replaced, and like, and I think like, well, who wants your life?
So you're bringing up two distinct topics. We have the three. You're bringing up that Ukrainians are displaced, and that's one issue. And you have another issue of in the United States, Republicans fear they're being displaced.
Yeah.
And that's about all I'm going to say.
Okay, the far right, not just all Republicans, but the far right um, want to be replaced. And my first feeling is like, I don't want to replace you, and then I'm done.
And your first counter or feeling in response, if you're going to respond, is I'm not going to replace you.
Right.
And so, I mean, you feel like you've been heard.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Kathy, would you like to reflect a little?
I'm listening.
I'm going to jump back to last week. And was it you, and I can ask a question, you don't have to respond, but you can reflect, that was talking about values?
You're reflecting back to last week and wondering if I was the one talking about values.
And I've been reflecting, and the value I like, and I've mentioned before, is lifting people up.
And so you've been reflecting on values, and the value you like is related to lifting people up.
Yeah, and it's just a simple phrase, but the idea is in exchanges with people, what's the outcome? Are you talking to them to pick their pockets? Are you talking to them to hustle them on a date? Are you talking to them looking for work? And you can reflect that.
So if I'm hearing you, you're realizing there's all these different conversations you can have with people, but in the end, you want to know that they leave lifted up by you.
Yeah, just as a guiding principle of why am I talking to you? And because we have all of these, well, I would hope we have all of these daily exchanges with people in shopping and in traveling the streets, and and so do we perceive people as a nuisance, or do we perceive people as a community or an asset or something to be valued.
So in all the interactions that all of us or most of us have on a daily basis, you're looking at how do you hold that person and how do you hold that conversation, and you want it to be part of a community and you want to uplift people.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it too complicated, and saying lifting up someone, it's a metaphor. It's a real open-ended metaphor, but yet it seems to have positive meaning.
Yeah. So you like that phrase, lifting people up. There's a lot of meaning to that, and you find value in thinking in that way.
Yes, and in closing, under extraordinarily stress, under extraordinarily fast unfolding horrible events, we sometimes will reach for a few words of comfort.
Mm.
And so what are these mantras or these words that run through your head when the metaphorical cow manure hits the fan?
So you're thinking about during these stressful, difficult times, what are the few words that one might say? You're curious about that? That's correct.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah. For me, it's, am I lifting someone up? Am I doing harm? Um, am I more concerned about my life or the other person's life?
Mm.
And so I just wanted to share that with everyone.
So I just want to share with everything that you're thinking about in these difficult times. You want to take care that your words are lifting them up and not harming.
I feel heard. Thank you, Kathy.
Right. Oh, let's see. I think maybe you, Larry, would you like to listen to me?
Yes, happy to.
Okay.
Kathy.
All right. So I have the experience today of it's taking a lot of work for me to listen, because I want to make sure I'm understanding accurately.
Kathy, I think I hear you say that you want to hear accurately, and it sounds like you're saying you're putting attention into that listening.
I know it feels like work today.
So it's feeling like work today, putting that attention into listening.
Yeah. Not work as in drudgery, but work as in caring that I listen accurately.
So it's not work as in drudgery, but it's in caring that you listen accurately.
Right. Yes. And two things I want to say. So as I continue to think about my opinions being expressed in juxtaposition to someone else's, now I'm thinking I don't even need to give my opinion.
So you're looking a little deeper in this idea of different opinions and of a kind of a hierarchy of opinions. And then what occurs is that, I don't even need to give my opinion.
Right. I'm now thinking I'm not going to give my opinion unless it's asked for.
And now you're thinking, I'm not even going to give my opinion unless it's asked for.
Right. Not in the way of I don't care to give my opinion, but more like I care that you want my opinion, and if you want it, you'll ask for it.
So it's not in a sense of like I'm not wanting to share my opinion. It's that, if you want to know my opinion, you will ask.
Right, exactly. And then I'm also looking at absolutes. And I'm no longer believing in absolutes. And I'll just use an absolute that you mentioned, Larry, that I also share. So I'm not saying that I don't share this, but when we think of we are all one, why do I need to tell people that I think that? Why don't I just show that by living it?
So looking at the idea of oneness, why not just demonstrate the oneness instead of saying one is the magic number or something like that?
Why do I need I'm just thinking my life should be a demonstration, not my words.
Yes, so your life would be a demonstration of the oneness, not needing to say the word, something like that.
Yes, thank you, Larry. I feel heard.
Thank you, Kathy. Eric, would you be my listener, please? Eric, could I ask Carrie, because I don't think Carrie's had a lot of chance to speak.
That's fine, that's fine.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Carrie, would you be my listener, please?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I love what Kathy was just sharing. Why talk about love when we can just live it?
Okay, so what Kathy shared really resonated with you, and you're reflecting now on the topic of love and why talk about it when we can, live love.
Yes. And I'm remembering what someone said years ago about NVC.
Okay, and now you are referring to something that you heard a while ago from somebody regarding nonviolent communication.
They said NVC doesn't even exist.
So this person was questioning, or more than questioning, was stating that NVC doesn't exist.
And by that, they mean the letters, the word, the concept. We sometimes think of that as being what's real, but it's not the concept. It's the living non-violently that's real.
Okay, so you're clarifying that they were rather saying that the concept, or perhaps the term NVC, is not the part that exists, but actually the act of living and sustaining a non-violent lifestyle that is real.
Exactly. Oneness doesn't really exist as a concept. It's the living that's the reality.
So what you're sharing with us is that the act and choice of living in oneness is the reality of oneness.
So if I had a library filled with books that all said one, but I hated you, that would be a perfect demonstration of hypocrisy.
So you're framing an example for us of a form of contradiction, whereby somebody may be informed in literature or research on a topic, but such as one, the example you gave us, and are living in a hateful way. And so the two don't match up actually in practice.
And my time ran out. Thank you, Carrie. I feel fully heard. Life is the example. Life itself, the way we live our life, is the teaching and the example. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. So your final reflection is that the way we live is our opportunity to really fully fulfill the practice. Okay. Kathy, would you listen for me?
I'm listening.
Okay. So I'm feeling really close to something that was highlighted by Bill, not in his most recent sharing, but the previous one about the need to be heard.
Mm. So you resonate with what Bill shared about the need to be heard.
Yeah, and this example of, I think the word extreme behavior was being used, of resorting to extreme behavior to feel that somebody is there for you or supporting you or listening to you.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about the extreme behavior that somebody did to find out if they have the support and somebody to listen to them.
Yeah, and it makes me reflect on sort of our means of communication in public spaces, in popular sort of cinema, or in the way that we work together, and what we experience as attractive or appealing communication that we're more inclined to listen to.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking of that form of getting your needs met, which is acting out, versus other ways of getting our needs met, which are more attractive ways to communicate. And you're holding both of those, and I'm not quite sure if I missed something about that.
Yeah, it could be in the way that I explained it. I guess I'm reflecting generally on, in the one extreme, this example of people having to really behave in an extreme way to be heard, but more generally, why we listen to people. So like the style of communication that usually ends up in having some element of power, because people listen to you because you speak in a certain way.
Okay, so you're reflecting on people who get listened to by the way they're communicating, and they're exhibiting some sort of power to get people to listen to in the way they're communicating, I guess.
Yeah. And probably my summary is, I hope that all voices can be heard, even if they're quiet voices.
You want all voices to be heard, even the quiet ones.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh. All right. So, Eric, are you ready to talk? I mean, are you ready to listen?
I think I'm ready to listen.
Okay. All right. I have a very short I'm the speaker. I have a very short thing I want to speak. It's a quote, because it kind of sums up what I'm talking about today. And this is, if I could achieve this, oh my God, I would feel like the most amazing person on earth, because I could never achieve it. So when your capacity to love becomes unstoppable, you're in sync with the universe, which is built of that kind of love. I'm putting it in the chat so you can quote it back, but I want to say it one more time because I love it. When your capacity to love becomes unstoppable, you're in sync with the universe, which is built of that kind of love. I absolutely love that.
So you wanted to share this quote because it really, in this moment, it's really impacting you, your feelings about all the stuff that you said today, it feels like this really just kind of consolidates it into what, really profound way. And the way that you wanted to share it is that through the quote of, I have to look at it, here it is, when your capacity to love becomes unstoppable, you're in sync with the universe, which is built of that kind of love. Phil Stutz. So you really feel connected to that. So I restated it.
Yeah, and when you read it to me, it's like I have, these inner tears of joy at the thought of working toward that.
So now that you hear it, what came to you in that moment was joy, to the degree of like a tearful joy of what that would be like to be in that moment.
To achieve that.
Okay, to achieve that in the present moment.
Well, to work toward that. I mean, I want to work toward that.
So in this moment, you're saying this is something that you want to work towards in your life, like a life goal.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I feel fully heard, Eric.
Thank you too, Kathy. And I'm gonna continue to pass because my mind is still kind of wandering. So I'm okay if someone wants to.
Shall we close, Kathy? We're at the quarter till.
We can, unless, so Bill, go ahead. Do you want to close?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to turn it over to Larry to debrief us, and then Edwin will tell us next steps if you're interested in doing more.
Okay, so this is the moment when we typically will be coming back to the big room, so to speak, after our breakout rooms. And then we would like each participant to share what was this experience like? Maybe some next steps related to empathy or empathy circles, something like that.
The chat, Larry.
It's in the chat. Let me close the timer and I'll be able to see the chat. Take a minute to describe one or two benefits or challenges you experience in the empathy circle today. So benefits and challenges in the experience of an empathy circle today, or next steps. So just go around the room and just ask each person to share openly. And I'll just start with Jonathan. Would you share for about a minute, please?
Well, thank you. I enjoyed listening to everyone today, and I think practice is important, and I like hearing things repeated. I do. I like hearing things repeated. And I'm sad that this idea is missing in what I call, or what many people call, push. I'm just thinking of, I'm going to go up and have lunch in a few minutes and maybe turn on the push machine or the TV. And all it is push, 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 push. And it was nice today because I felt I didn't feel the push. I felt kind of a back and forth of a small community. So thank you, or thank everyone.
Thank you, Jonathan. Carrie, would you share your experience today?
Sure thing. So I think a personal benefit for me was the transition of my experience. When I first joined the call, I was feeling nervous and anxious, and even kind of like some body sensations about questioning how to do this practice. And by the end of it, I feel really calm, really at ease, and very warm and grateful. So I think that was a huge benefit, this transition. I think a challenge for me was thinking a lot about what I would say and then actually ending up with not enough time to speak what I had to say. So it was thinking I have nothing to share and then actually running out of time. So yeah, it's a learning more than a challenge and something interesting. And I pass to Bill.
Sure. Well, I always love to hear from other people and just what they're experiencing. It reinforces my feeling that we really have to solve the problems we face together. And that's just a requirement. And I think this is a good way to create the foundation. It doesn't solve the problem, but it creates a basis for communication on how to solve the problem. And the other thing that next steps is, and I've been working very hard to try to bring this practice into schools because I think this is something that kids need to learn. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Eric, would you share your experience today? Challenges?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Larry. Yeah, thanks everyone for letting me join your group. And I think we all have a different take on what our experience is, but I'm just here to enjoy myself and have safe communication or safe environment or safe container, whatever you want to call it. But, just a place where I can kind of decompress and know that, I'm not going to be, no inordinate surprises. So I enjoy it. And I don't really feel challenged by anything because all my challenging thoughts come and go. So I can't even remember half of them. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Nick, would you share, please?
Yeah, I think the benefits that I found were, gaining insights from what other people said. I think it was nice to hear different perspectives, and I think it added a lot of, just insightful moments. And I loved hearing about the metaphors and different people's imagery of how they kind of thought about things. And I also noticed as time went on, I felt, more connected to each one of you and the group kind of thing, right? So there was more of a caring for the general group and individuals. And I found maybe one of the challenges was that there were times when I wanted to be, more engaged with it and do it more often and more speaking and active listening. So that was one of the challenges. And then also just sticking with all the different threads and all the different topics was challenging at times because I cared about so many of them. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nick. And Kathy, would you share, please?
So I've grown a lot since I've started these circles, and without the intention of coming here to grow, it just is a byproduct. And today some insights came up that I had no idea were percolating. And so part of how I grow is by listening to other people. And part of how my ideas get generated is being in the space of others and hearing what they're talking about. So I found great value today. And I always feel challenged, like about 40 minutes into the circle, when we're like halfway through or 45 minutes in, I look at the clock and I think, God, how am I going to go another 45 minutes? And before you know it, it's gone. So it's like, I always have that challenge, but I know I'm going to get through it. But so that's it.
Thank you, Kathy. And I'll just say that benefits to me, this is the way life is meant to be lived, where we human beings are living in this empathic, safe planet that we've created for ourselves. So the benefits are aliveness and health and all those happy hormones that flow as we feel heard, and that we could live in peace if we practice this way of communicating. Challenges, zero. Next steps, I think I'm going to do some empathy circles. Thank you. Edwin, how was your experience today?
Yeah, I think that to create an empathic way of being. One part of that is to reach out to new people, to really be willing and interested in talking and connecting with others. So I really appreciate Carrie's and Eric and Nick's being here, and so a chance to connect with new people. And challenge, yeah, I'm not sure. I can't think of any real challenge except with wanting to maybe focus on that going deeper kind of aspect. I talked about some empathy circles for talking about concerns, anxieties, fears, because I've had the experience by facing those that, and talking about them, is you kind of move through them, and it was really quite profound, some profound experiences with that. So it's something I'm sort of thinking about for going into greater depth. In terms of next steps, that's my job here, is to report on the next steps. And I'm going to put some links in. The first one is a calendar of upcoming empathy circles. So there's some links there to LinkedIn, Facebook, and a Google Calendar of various circles that are held. Larry's holding some, Bill's holding some on Thursdays for empathy circles in schools. And then next week we have, at the same time we meet again, we have these intro cafes, but once a month we have a community of the peace building, conflict resolution community. We meet here and have an empathy circle, and it's on share mediation, peace building challenges that you're working on. There's a link there to the LinkedIn event that you can go check out. So we have a lot of different organizations sponsoring that. Kathy is with the Peace Alliance. I'm with the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy. We have the National Coalition of Dialogue Deliberation, the Listen First Coalition, and the CoPC, which is a LinkedIn conflict group, transformation group. So we'll be having that here. So it should be an interesting event. So it ties in with conflict mediation. So you might find that of interest. And then the last link there is if you could fill out the feedback form, especially for the new people here, you can add your email. We can add you to the email list, and just hear any more thoughts about about this Empathy Cafe, any sort of feedback about it. And I think that's it for me. Bill or Kathy or Larry, any other next steps?
No,
Come back. Everybody come back.
Yeah.
Mm.
You were going to say, Bill? Did you say?
just I want to let people know that we suspended the empathy in schools sessions for the rest of December, and we'll start them up in January.
Okay, good to know. All right, that's it. Kathy, take it away.
Okay, jazz hands, say goodbye, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next time.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
We'll
Bye.
Good to meet
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
Be sure to fill out those feedback forms to get your email, Nick, so to
Yeah,
stay in
It
contact.
was great to
Especially-
meet you guys, and I will definitely be back for some more.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and see what we can do some more with John Vervaeke. I think we may do some more stuff with him. I'd love to. I've been thinking of inviting him. We had invited Jordan Peterson to do an empathy circle. So I just did an interview with Warren Farrell. I don't know if he did the book The Boy Crisis. So he's in contact with Jordan Peterson. Has done like 2 or 3 interviews, been interviewed 2 or 3 times with him, plus working and developing a course. Let me turn this off, actually, the recording.